Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a lovely new disc on Deutsche Grammophon of Symphonies by Mieczysław Weinberg. Now, the biggest problem with music by Weinberg is that it is only recently that the industry has finally decided what his name is. I have never seen a composer whose name has been spelled so many different ways. Now it's this. Actually, they've sort of put the conductor as top billing, which is a big mistake. And I don't understand it, especially when you have this name. Speaking of names, this is why when they made a movie about a lady conductor, she had a single syllable last name, Tur. She did not have a name of Gražinytė-Tyla. That's a little more complicated. But then if you're Lithuanian, it's more complicated. Her name is Mirga Gražinytė-Tyla. And she's very, very gifted, and it's wonderful. But boy, that's a toughie, isn't it? And the music is by Mieczysław Weinberg. I know. If you're from Lithuania or Poland, this is cup of tea. It's not a problem. But I'm a primitive American, and we primitive Americans need names like Smith and Jones, right? Yeah, okay. Anyway, look, here's the deal. This is wonderful, wonderful music. And Weinberg has been called Weinberg, Vaynberg, and VW's VIE something, because he went from Poland to Russia. So his name went from Polish to Cyrillic, and it got transliterated back, and the Mieczysław could be Moise. It's just unbelievable. And so for many decades, as I was collecting his music, I didn't know how many composers I was dealing with. It turned out they were all the same guy. He was very, very prolific. So on this disc, we have Symphonies numbers 3 and 7 and his Flute Concerto number 1. Now, I have sort of been hesitating to talk about Weinberg because his music is very tough to describe. People say he sounds a little bit like Shostakovich, and he was very friendly with Shostakovich from his Moscow period. And he sort of does sometimes, but there's a really, really big difference. The difference, I think, in emotional quality is this. Shostakovich had a certainty to what he did emotionally. His tragic music is really tragic. His happy music is really happy. His sardonic music is really sardonic. There's nothing like that in Weinberg. Weinberg's music, first of all, is much more concise, by and large. Second of all, there is nothing certain about his music. There is an inconstancy, an evanescence about his music that's really quite special. I mean, it's very beautiful, also very disturbing. He doesn't have to be as relentless as Shostakovich in order to be, just as bleak in many respects, because you never get the sense that anything is settled in this music. Everything about it is provisional. How do I get that across? Well, let's talk about these pieces, and maybe you'll see what I mean. Now, the 7th Symphony is for strings and harpsichord. The harpsichord is used in a very, very sparing way. If you're going to write a piece for strings and harpsichord, it's going to come up sounding like a harpsichord concerto, right? Well, this doesn't. It begins with a solo on the harpsichord, then the strings enter. The two instruments or the two instrumental types, harpsichord and strings, sort of alternate. They seldom play together. I mean, they do. And the harpsichord is only used occasionally for color or timbral interest. And the work has 5 movements. They're played without a break. And it begins with the same harpsichord tune that it ends with. And when it's over, you're left wondering, what was that? Was it a concerto? No, there wasn't enough solo work for it to be a concerto. Is it symphonic in the sense of developmental? Well, not exactly. It is. It has an arc of very, very beautiful lyricism. But with Weinberg, again, as soon as you get lyricism, it's immediately undercut by something else. And so it has a lot of very slow music and then sudden eruptions of darkness and great passion. It's quite listenable. And at the end, it just leaves you sort of scratching your head. with a kind of like, what was that, you know? I mean, that doesn't mean it doesn't have wonderful moments along the way or that it's not a satisfying formal structure. It's all of those things, but it's always questioning itself. The second work on the disc is a flute concerto. It's for flute and strings. It's short, it's perky. The flute writing is delicious, but it's almost as if Weinberg has taken account of the timbre of the flute and is deathly afraid that his orchestra is going to blow away his soloist. I mean, the first movement is very twitchy and very, what's the word? Well, like I said, perky. I mean, it is, but, you know, the flute is constantly in motion. It starts out with almost like a folky little tune, but it goes in strange, darker directions. It's like almost like a butterfly fluttering around, trying to find, you know, a place to come to rest. The slow movement is very solemn, very, very beautiful, very poignant. The finale returns sort of to the mood of the first movement, but it's a waltz, a kind of sly, almost diffident waltz. And again, the scoring is so delicate, so sensitive to the soloist. And you almost get a sense that the orchestra is afraid to participate. And that's the kind of provisional aspect of the work. I mean, it's brilliant display for the flutist. And it's a lovely work. And again, when it's done, you're scratching your head, sort of going like, what was that? I mean, of course, it's better to do it delicately and let you hear the flute at all times than it is to have some sort of silly kazanga, orchestral, huge thing that's always risking overloading the flute. But still, what's the emotional message of the piece? I have no idea. Then we get to the Third Symphony. Now, the Third Symphony was supposed to be Weinberg's rehabilitation piece. He got in trouble, just like Shostakovich got in trouble in 1948 with the party and all that. His music was too difficult, too forward-looking, too formalist. It wasn't socialist realist, blah, 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 blah. We all know the story. And so Weinberg wrote this symphony, which he withdrew and waited 10 years to release. It was written in, it says here somewhere, it was written in the 1940s and revised in the late 1950s after Khrushchev had come to power and things were a little safer. Now, this is a work for full orchestra. It's a very beautiful work. It contains, melodic material based on a couple of folk tunes, and it ends happily, sort of. I mean, talk about provisional endings. I mean, the finale is full of sort of savagery and turmoil, and it rises to this triumphant conclusion and cuts off before it can change its mind, because it's going to, because everything that it starts to do gets undermined by some form of darkness or contrarian tendency. The folk tunes are basically in the first two movements. They're very well chosen. They're very beautiful. It's impossible to tell if the symphony has some kind of subtext going about it. It very well may, based on what the words of those tunes are. But none of that matters because the music itself tells the whole story. The first movement combines these two tunes expertly. It rises to a big climax. They're repeated in revised form in the recapitulation. And then the end is strangely enigmatic and solemn. It goes off in another direction. The scherzo is very witty. I mean, it uses these tunes in a very jocular fashion, somewhat sardonic, somewhat Shostakovich-like, if you want to call it that. But again, it sort of peters out. The slow movement is anguished and deeply expressive and wonderfully lyrical, full of really attractive ideas that are, somehow, it's sad. It's sad music. Sad, but not tragic, the way Shostakovich is. It's sad with a question mark, always a question mark in this music. And then, like I said, there's that finale that has a really rough Russian folky, quasi-Slavic Jewish melody, something like that kind of feel to it. And it seems like it's going to end rather nastily until it stumbles on a major chord and bang, it stops before anything else can happen. The piece, again, is well within normal limits in terms of length. It's easy to take in, but the emotional message, I mean, this is the thing that puzzles me about Weinberg's music. And I find it, on the one hand, very hypnotic and somewhat attractive, but on the other hand, quite disturbing and a little bit, and slippery emotionally. There's a sadness that's always there in all of his music. It's really, really quite fascinating. I urge you to hear it. These performances are beautiful. They're with the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra and the Deutsche Kammerphilharmonie Bremen, with Kirill Gerstein harpsichord, Mary Christine Zupanchik, flute, I think. Yeah, that's who we're dealing with. And the performances are superb. And Mirga Gražinytė-Tyla, there you go, I got it, does a wonderful job as a conductor. She's terrific. It's all great. It's all great, but it's all puzzling at the same time. That's all I can say about it. You have to listen and make up your own mind, and I urge you to do so. So keep on listening, friends. Take care.